From 360 feet up, this stretch of land looks a lot like East Tennessee. This old mine's been left to the frogs for years.
The peak coal mining in Virginia was in 1990, so it's really declined since then.
Daniel Kestner with the state and Brian Phelan with Wise County see some light at the end of the coal tunnel. Solar.
There's a lot of land that's suitable for solar.
We do think that there are potentially thousands of acres across the wider region.
That could benefit both sides. Regrading coal mines is costly and time-consuming, but solar developers prefer flat sites.
They're in places typically where there's not a lot of folks around.
This is not prime farmland. Plus, utility hookups are often built in from back when the mine needed massive power.
People have been real accepting of solar going on these old mine sites because they see the value.
Not just cash for the developers or rent for the government, but value in jobs.
There's some workforce transition and training programs that are being put in place to move former coal miners over to doing solar and other renewables.
For solar projects, the job creation is really on the front end of that, in construction, in electrical engineering.
Like next to this data center, which requires a lot of wattage for cooling.
It has not been used. Once coal mining was done and the reclamation work was done, this parcel especially has not had any activity on it.
This abandoned surface mine has sat dormant for the past few decades, but just a few months from now, it will house 16 acres of solar panels. With newly announced partnerships in East Tennessee, projects like this will be in our own backyard soon.
We have one site that we've identified with one of our developers right now in Tennessee that shows promise for solar.
Part of the Nature Conservancy's Ataya property, 100,000 acres just west of the Cumberland Gap.
Mostly in Claiborne and Campbell counties.
This site at Coburn is what Brad Krebs from the Nature Conservancy calls the first generation, a proving ground for even larger projects.
So this is going to be one of the first projects like this of its kind.
In Campbell County, Tennessee alone, there are 44 abandoned mines, according to the government's master list. Plenty of options and lots of money using deserted land to help the climate. Ben Cathey, WVLT News.
We've got a couple million barrels aging here around Lynchburg.
There's a lot of money maturing inside these white oak barrels. Old number 7, susceptible to new warming, and the hot weather impacts the whiskey proof.
We want the cycles. We do want it hot. Hot is good for some things.
Up this staircase, you'll find high test Tennessee whiskey, up to 155 proof. Jack Daniels cited extreme weather leading to higher alcohol. We couldn't turn on our camera lights because of the alcohol fumes.
We'd never done that before. We'd never left barrels on that top floor for 9.5 years before.
Inside this Hilltop Barrel House, there is no AC to be found, and it gets hot in summer. So hot that they lose about 1/3 of the product in these barrels to evaporation alone. Recent climate outlooks show that Tennessee is only going to continue to warm in the coming decades, and that could mean more evaporation.
Alcohol is very reactive to heat. Right, it'll expand very quickly, and it will literally be absorbed into the pores of the barrel. But that's where it pulls color and flavor from.
Master distiller Chris Fletcher makes sure the whiskey drinks the same year after year. As the world changes, Jack Daniels can't.
Trust me, if Old Number 7 starts to taste different, it's going to be a really bad day for me and a lot of folks here. We're not going to let that happen.
A brand this big has control over their raw materials, but Fletcher says they're not immune to the weather or climate.
Sure, really hard drought years can be hard on a corn crop or a barley crop. Now, do we sometimes have to make adjustments and things if we feel like that the raw material needs it? We will.
They do that by blending barrels from the cooler parts of the property with the hot stuff.
But we proved during a really hot time that we can actually let it go further. So I think there's plenty of runway.
Fletcher's grandfather was master distiller for more than 20 years here. The Lynchburg native knows there's a legacy to maintain, flavor and family.
If you can't have fun and be excited to make whiskey, then I think you're probably just doing it wrong.
In Lynchburg, meteorologist Ben Cathey, WVLT News.
There's a local delicacy that grows in our East Tennessee mountains, ripe for only a couple of weeks a year. Chances are if you got deep roots here, your grandparents ate them. You'll find them in some of the better restaurants in town too. They're called ramps. There's not very many of them anymore. Ben Cathey takes us to Cosby to find out why.
It's hard to find them and they're not everywhere.
As sure as the warblers sing and the trillium blooms, ramps are a sign of spring in the Smokies.
They are one of the first plants to come up in the springtime.
They come up around February sometimes if it's warm.
But now the stinky wild onion has a lot working against it.
The time to recover from a harvest can be very long, 100 years if you do an extensive harvest.
Dr. Lou Gross says that just a few minutes of picking and the damage is done for generations. Now ramp picking is banned in the national park.
You could harvest maybe 10% of a patch every 10 years without having significant impact. So you think about that, that's a pretty small amount.
That's Dr. Jim Chamberlain from the USDA. He's an expert in forest plants, and ramps are a specialty.
I've measured tens of thousands of plants.
He likes them in soups. Others fry them in bacon grease and add eggs. Many haven't even heard of them.
What people are missing is just a really beautiful food, although it seems like a lot of city people know about them because they come out here and dig them.
Taking the bulb takes the plant. Cynthia Johnston uses small amounts for her moon-made botanicals. She's been eating only the leaves for decades.
The flavor will just pop.
Dr. Gross says the Smokies are as far south as they'll grow, and they have to grow fast.
That biomass is increasing maybe 30% every week.
Until the trees box them in, you'll only find them for around 3 weeks in April. This hill near Cosby has been visited for at least 40 years by Cynthia's older neighbor. Lately,
she's seen them disappear over her 90-year lifespan.
Because they're often overpicked, only grow for a short amount of the year and at higher elevations, the experts we talked to say ramps are uniquely vulnerable to climate change.
Couple degree changes in temperature due to climate.
Dr. Gross says if you look around, you'll see the impact on your own life.
We've seen climate change here in East Tennessee.
From one decade to the next, warmer temps, spikes in too much or too little rain, and
shifts in where plants are and where animals are.
I observe these things every year, and so they seem to be early. These plants are really sensitive to temperature.
In the Smokies, it won't take much.
They may die, right?
Both researchers say it's often hard to see such change because that takes decades.
We just don't see it because it's really slow.
Ramps made a special appearance in the National Climate Assessment, released a few years ago by the Trump White House.
Ramps are a unique cultural benefit to this region.
For the Cherokee, for the homesteaders, for the visitors at the many ramp festivals in East Tennessee, the report has 3 words: ramps are threatened. In Cosby, Ben Cathey, WVLT News.